The contract sitting on my desk would save Sullivan and Associates from bankruptcy. 60 pages of legal jargon that would rescue my family's consulting firm from the disaster they'd created. All it needed was my signature. As CEO of Avalon Technologies, the client they desperately needed. They had no idea I owned it. Through my office window, I watched Seattle's autumn rain paint patterns on the glass. My assistant Diana's voice came through the intercom. "Your father and brother are in the lobby. They're early for the meeting." Of course they were. James Sullivan Sr. and Jr., always punctual when desperation was involved. "Let them wait," I said, remembering all the times they'd made me wait. All the times they'd dismissed my ideas, mocked my vision, pushed me out of the family business. The memory of my last day at Sullivan and Associates played in my mind like a movie I couldn't stop watching. "Have fun with your little startup," my brother had called after me, his laughter echoing through the marble lobby. "When you fail, maybe we'll let you come back as a junior associate." Dad hadn't even looked up from his phone. "She'll learn the hard way that business isn't about innovation and disruption. It's about tradition, connections, doing things the way they've always been done." I'd walked out of their prestigious downtown office building carrying only my laptop and determination. No severance, no support, not even a reference. They'd made sure I understood that leaving the family business meant leaving everything behind. That was 3 years ago. Their faces when they realize. Diana's voice held a hint of anticipation. "Not yet," I interrupted. "Let's review the numbers first." Diana entered my office carrying a thick folder. At Sullivan and Associates, she'd been a junior secretary, constantly overlooked and undervalued. Now she was my chief of operations, proving that I wasn't the only talent they'd failed to recognize. "Sullivan and Associates has lost 60% of their major clients in the past 2 years, she reported, spreading documents across my desk. "Their traditional consulting model can't compete with digital solutions. They've had 3 rounds of layoffs and rumor has it they can't make payroll next month." I nodded, unsurprised. "And their attempts to modernize?" "Failed spectacularly. They hired some overpriced digital transformation consultants who basically just made their letterhead electronic." Diana's smile was sharp with schadenfreude. "They need this contract with Avalon Technologies to survive." I picked up the contract thinking about the irony. When I'd first proposed creating digital consulting solutions at Sullivan and Associates, my father had called it millennial nonsense. My brother had actually laughed during my presentation. "Real consulting is about personal relationships," he'd insisted. "Face-to-face meetings, golf games, expensive dinners. Clients don't want apps and algorithms." So I'd left, taking my millennial nonsense and starting Vertex Solutions, a digital consulting platform that would eventually become the parent company of Avalon Technologies. The first year was brutal. Working from my studio apartment, living on ramen and coffee, learning to code between consulting gigs. But I understood something they didn't. The future of consulting wasn't in mahogany offices and 3 martini lunches. It was in data analytics, AI-driven solutions, and digital transformation. The breakthrough came faster than even I'd expected. Major tech companies, frustrated with traditional consulting firms, flocked to our innovative approach. Within 18 months, Vertex Solutions was handling more business than Sullivan and Associates had in their best year. I kept my success quiet, using my middle name on company documents. Alexandra Grace became known as a rising star in digital consulting, while Alex Sullivan remained the family disappointment. When Avalon Technologies, one of the fastest-growing tech firms in Seattle, came up for sale, I bought it through a holding company. Sullivan and Associates never realized their former junior partner now owned a company they were desperately courting. My phone buzzed. A text from my brother. "Meeting's still on for 10? Dad's nervous about closing this deal." I smiled, remembering his smug face when he told me I'd never succeed without the family name behind me. "Diana," I called, "bring me the latest performance reports for Sullivan and Associates. The real ones, not the polished version they show clients." She returned with more documents, these ones showing the true extent of their decline. Failed projects, lost clients, mounting debts, all hidden behind expensive suits and premium office space they could no longer afford. "Their pitch meeting should be interesting," Diana mused. "They still think they're coming to convince Avalon's board to sign with them. Instead, they're meeting me." I stood up, smoothing my blazer. How long should we let them present before dropping the bomb? Let them do the whole song and dance, Diana suggested. Your brother probably prepared one of his famous PowerPoint presentations. I laughed, remembering James Jr.'s devotion to PowerPoint transitions and clip art. Some things never changed. Another text from my brother. Brought the whole executive team. Really need this to work. I bet they did. Sullivan and Associates had bet everything on landing this contract. Their reputation, their future, their survival, all depending on my signature. The same signature they'd mocked me for not having authority to use 3 years ago. 10 minutes until the meeting, Diana reminded me. Should I send someone to escort them up? I looked out at the rain-soaked city again, thinking about karma and justice and the perfect moment for revelation. No, I decided. I'll go down myself. I want to see their faces when they realize who they're really meeting with. I gathered the contracts and performance reports, tucking them into a sleek portfolio. The same portfolio I'd carried the day I left Sullivan and Associates, only now it held their fate instead of my dreams. Have the boardroom ready, I instructed Diana. Let's give them the full Avalon Technologies experience before we show them who really runs things. Sometimes success isn't just about proving them wrong. It's about watching them realize just how wrong they were. And I was about to give them front row seats to that realization. The Sullivan and Associates team stood in Avalon's lobby like peacocks among pigeons, their expensive suits and practiced poses screaming old-school consulting. My father checked his Rolex, a nervous habit he'd had for as long as I could remember. My brother was rehearsing his pitch under his breath, clutching his presentation folder like a shield. I watched them through the security feed for a moment, savoring what was about to happen. Ready? Diana asked, barely containing her glee. Almost. I straightened my blazer, thinking about the day they'd laughed me out of the building. Let's make them wait 5 more minutes. Finally, I stepped out of the elevator, my heels clicking against the marble floor. My father saw me first, his expression morphing from confusion to shock to something close to fear. Alex. My brother's voice cracked. What are you doing here? Good morning, gentlemen. I kept my voice professional neutral. I believe you have a presentation for Avalon Technologies? We have a meeting with the board, Dad managed, his face pale. With Alexandra Grace. Yes, I smiled. You do. The silence that followed was delicious. My brother started. Alexandra Grace? CEO of Avalon Technologies and founder of Vertex Solutions. I gestured toward the elevator. Shall we head up to the boardroom? I'm eager to hear your pitch. They followed me like stunned sheep, the rest of their executive team exchanging confused glances. In the elevator, my father kept opening and closing his mouth, clearly struggling to process what was happening. The boardroom at Avalon was everything Sullivan and Associates wasn't: modern, digital, efficient. No mahogany, no oil paintings, just clean lines and cutting-edge technology. Please, I indicated the chairs. Begin whenever you're ready. My brother fumbled with his laptop, nearly dropping it as he tried to connect to our presentation system. The PowerPoint title slide appeared. Sullivan and Associates. Tradition meets innovation. I had to bite back a laugh. As you can see, he started, his usual confidence wavering, Sullivan and Associates brings over 50 years of consulting excellence. Let's skip the history lesson, I interrupted. Show me your digital transformation strategy. How do you plan to integrate with Avalon's AI-driven systems? He clicked through his slides frantically. We have a very robust digital approach. Really? I pulled up Sullivan's latest project metrics on the room's secondary screens. Because these numbers suggest otherwise. 70% of your clients report dissatisfaction with your digital solutions. Your last 3 technology integration projects failed completely. My father stood up. Tao, see here. No, you see here. I pulled out their real financial reports. Sullivan and Associates is 3 months from bankruptcy. You've lost most of your major clients to firms that actually understand modern consulting. The only thing keeping you afloat is your reputation, and even that's fading fast. The room went silent except for the hum of technology. How did you get those numbers? My brother demanded. I'm very good at what I do. Which is why Avalon Technologies is worth billions while Sullivan and Associates is dying. We're not dying, Dad protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Really? I pressed a button and more data filled the screens. Should we discuss the layoffs you're planning? The office lease you can't afford? The clients who are already talking to Vertex Solutions about switching? My brother's face went from red to white. Vertex Solutions, that's also me? Yes. Turns out my little startup is now the fastest growing consulting firm in the Pacific Northwest. Diana entered with another stack of documents. The latest client acquisition reports, Ms. Grace. Thank you, Diana. Or should I say Chief Operations Officer Diana? I smiled at their shocked expressions. Remember her? The junior secretary you never promoted. My father sank into his chair. Why didn't you tell us? Would you have listened? You didn't listen when I warned you about digital transformation. You didn't listen when I proposed modernizing Sullivan and Associates. You literally laughed me out of the building. We were wrong, my brother said quietly. Yes, you were. About everything. I opened the contract they so desperately needed. Now let's discuss your future. You're going to sign? Dad asked hopefully. No. I watched their faces fall. But I am going to make you an offer. I slid new documents across the table. Vertex Solutions will acquire Sullivan and Associates. We'll absorb your remaining clients, retain some of your staff, and modernize your entire operation. Acquire. My brother's voice rose. You mean take over? I mean save you from bankruptcy. Though yes, that means I'll be your boss. My father flipped through the papers, his hands shaking slightly. These terms are generous, considering your situation. I stood up. You have 24 hours to decide. Choose wisely. And if we refuse? My brother challenged, a last flicker of his old arrogance. Then I'll watch Sullivan and Associates collapse and I'll pick up your clients one by one. I shrugged. Your choice. They signed the papers the next day. What choice did they have? Their empire was crumbling and I owned their only lifeline. The transformation of Sullivan and Associates was both brutal and beautiful. We stripped away the expensive pretense, the outdated methods, the resistance to change. Some employees couldn't adapt and left. Others, finally free to innovate, thrived. My brother, surprisingly, turned out to have a talent for digital project management once he stopped fighting it. I should have listened to you 3 years ago, he admitted one late night as we worked on integration plans. My father took longer to come around, but eventually even he had to admit that my millennial nonsense had saved his legacy. Last week, during a client presentation, I watched my brother confidently demonstrate our AI-driven consulting platform, the same technology he'd once dismissed as a fad. He caught my eye and smiled, a genuine smile without the old smugness. Remember when we thought we knew everything about consulting? He asked later. Remember when you laughed at my startup? He had the grace to look embarrassed. We were idiots. Yes, you were. I smiled. But you learned. That's what matters. Yesterday, a business magazine wanted to interview me about the merger. They asked why I saved Sullivan and Associates instead of letting it fail. I showed them a photo from my last day at the firm, standing in the lobby with my laptop and dreams. Sometimes success isn't about destroying the old guard, I told them. It's about teaching them a new way to march. The Sullivan and Associates name still exists, but as a division of Vertex Solutions. Their old offices have been transformed into a modern tech hub. Even the Rolex my father nervously checked that day has been replaced by a smartwatch. Sometimes the best revenge isn't watching them fail. It's making them succeed on your terms. And sometimes, just sometimes, family businesses need to be broken before they can be rebuilt.